Good evening. Welcome to Flames Unfiltered. As Kyle, we are flying by the seat of our pants today because it seems like everything I'm touching, I went wrong.
Yeah, some technical difficulties, before we get off the ground here today, but that's okay. I think we've often agreed the less prepared we are, the at least more entertaining it tends to be.
Seems to be.
Which is a great segue, actually.
Before we get Flames Unfiltered, I am Brad Burud. That is Kyle Lewis. We're here talking Flames hockey each and every week.
Yeah, it's we'll get into this more in depth, but reeling from our first loss, although we did get a point.
It's a weird feeling.
It is I really wanted them to get that 5-0 start for the first time ever, but it was not to be. No. We were actually conversing quite a bit during that game about everything under the sun, so that was turns out we have even more in common than we thought.
Yes.
So that's always fun. It's not just shitty heavy metal in hockey, it turns out.
No, it's other shitty stuff right now. Just it is funny though, because for those of you that we've talked about it on the show before, but for those of you who don't know, Kyle and I met on Twitter at the time, and it was like looking at each other's profiles, it's like, oh, okay, this guy's very similar to me here. And so we started visiting on there, and one thing led to another, and now we do a podcast together. And
yeah, it's crazy. It's been a while now too.
Yeah, what are we this is our third year.
It's got third for sure. Man, that's how you know. It's like I was saying actually recently, so I do this thing now where when people ask me how old I am, I'm starting to roll over to the next year. It's like, I'm 37. It's like, no. I'm still 36.
You wait another 10, 15 years when somebody asks it, you'll be like, oh shit, let me think.
Oh, well, and that's okay. So a great story about this actually is my an ex-girlfriend of mine who I'm still quite close to. Her mom had said for like years, oh, I'm 70. I'm like, well, you can't be 70 every year. Like, what the hell? Well, this summer she actually turned 70.
Okay. So she was jumping the gun?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I said to my ex, like,
you jumped the gun on age, man.
Well, I don't maybe it's like I don't really know what the reason could be before it, but it was really confusing for me because, like, no, she's actually 70 this time. I'm like, well, fuck, she's been telling me she's 70 for 5 years. Like,
you know what? Is it one of those things? It sounds like a woman thing where it's like, hey, if I say I'm older, I'm going to look younger to them.
That's a possibility. I'll allow it. That's a possibility. But, if I ever even get near that age, I mean, God knows what excuses I'll have to make up. So,
we'll probably still be doing this. Hopefully we'll be talking. God, I hope by then we have a Stanley Cup to talk about.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice. So I'm going to tell a funny story, and then we'll get into the hockey stuff. My neighbors, Mitch and Maddie, have become two of my closest friends because our dogs are such good friends. And it turns out that apart from you, Mitch is probably the one guy I can talk to the most about, hair metal and heavy metal and classic rock and all that stuff. So anyway, we got really high yesterday, which I'm not really big into smoking weed, but every now and then it'll happen. Anyway, we got really high. And somebody brought up garlic fingers. So we decided to order garlic fingers, right? And in so doing...
Where do you order garlic fingers from? Because we don't call them
pizza place. Yeah, pizza place. Just any pizza place. So we order them, and Mitch turns to me in the midst of this and like asks me what kind of toppings I want. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, they're garlic fingers. You put like bacon bits on them. Like, I don't know. So he puts a bunch of toppings on them, and he ended up like he had to pick the crust twice. And I'm like, it doesn't quite line up, but I'm like, all right, whatever. So it shows up from I think we skipped the dishes or Uber Eats, one of the two anyway. And there's two. There's a garlic finger and there's a full pizza. And he's like, oh, like they gave us somebody's pizza by mistake. Like this, cool. And I'm like, that's really weird. Like, that's a pretty egregious mistake. It turns out he actually ordered a full pizza and picked 3 toppings. I didn't realize it. And none of the 3 of us caught what had happened. We just believe we were accidentally given this extra pizza. So I basically vegged out afterwards after I ate way too much. And then by the time, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 o'clock that evening, I'd come back down to earth and was ready to watch some hockey, but it made for an interesting day.
Jeez. Yeah. Free food, you thought.
Yeah. I don't come to think of it. I don't think he even realized it until he actually looked at his phone to see what he'd done. And his wife and I were no help because we didn't know either. Expensive garlic fingers. Yeah. So wait a minute. What the hell do you guys call them? Or do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we call them breadsticks usually, or we'll call them like if they have like the garlic on the top of them, then it'd be like garlic bread or garlic sticks.
But see, garlic, like breadsticks and garlic bread are different things here. This is this is cut like a pizza, but into like small pieces instead of like triangular pieces.
Yeah, just cut into like sticks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just call.
I'm coming to North Dakota. You got to show me what you're talking about because
I don't even what's sad now. Like if you said you were going to come to North Dakota and we were going to go for pizza, like I don't even know what I'd take you to. You wouldn't want to go to like a pizza chain. You'd want to go to like a local and probably be Night Train. That's my place.
That sounds great. I never heard of it. You said Night Train?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a great Guns N' Roses song. We're off to a flying
It's spelled the same way. It's spelled the same way as a Guns N' Roses song too.
Ah, that's fantastic. Do they serve that drink, Night Train, that song's written after?
No, they don't.
Yeah, because if memory serves, that would really mess you up. Anyway, enough about Guns N' Roses and being high and inadvertently ordering pizzas.
So, I got a question for you.
Is it about getting high and ordering pizza?
No.
All right, fire away. What do you got?
John Abbott.
Yes.
We knew the transition was going to be difficult because me and you were both Rick Ball fans.
Yes.
And we knew the transition was going to be difficult. And I will say so far, I don't dislike him at all.
I listened to some clips of him.
It doesn't feel comfortable yet.
Really?
It's getting there.
Yeah. Huh.
Did you hear Elliot Friedman last night?
No.
Yeah.
What did he say?
He says, "Oh, way to go, John Abbott, on your first night of hockey night in Canada. You jinxed Dan Vladar by saying he hasn't lost a game in Seattle yet."
Oh.
It's like, just saying it. He's 3-0 in Seattle sounds so much less jinxy than saying you haven't lost a game in Seattle.
Yeah, this is true. Did you also hear Elliot Friedman talking about in one of the intermissions about the Flames? Like they went bowling, I guess.
Yeah, I did.
And they were like, basically trolling with each other, like they lying about their scores and stuff. Like just a really loose, like fun time.
Well, they sandbagged it. They didn't say who. I wish they would have said who. I don't understand why it's a secret, but somebody was sandbagging in the first round that was not the money round, so that looked like he sucked it and got paired up with somebody that did suck and then shot at 200.
Yeah. whatever it was, it was a good time and shows the cohesiveness of this team. But back to John Abbott, because I got to chime in on this. I listened to him a little bit in the summer, trying to familiarize myself with his voice and his style. I think he's been exceptional so far, and I love Rick Ball. His first hockey night in Canada, I think his play-by-play calls were great. His enthusiasm is where it should be. It's not that over-the-top homer bullshit we've complained about in the past with Jack Edwards and those kind of guys, right?
I'm all for it. Yep, I like it. It's professional. It's very professional.
Yep, really, really enjoyed it. Greg Millen obviously is a good partner. Kelly Rudy for the normal Sportsnet broadcast, so I expect to be riding shotgun with him most of the time. I'm looking forward to hearing more of that.
I love Kelly.
I was kind of thinking I'd like to have Peter Labardius back, and I still love Peter Labardius, but John Abbott's been really, really good so far. And we're going to have to tweet him because I don't know if he listens to this or not, but we want him to hear our praise for sure.
Yeah, for sure. The Chase, did you watch the episode 4?
I did.
I thought episode 4 was the best one, and I don't know that if it was just because it was more locker room and we could remember what was going on because it was regular season and we got to see the comeback from Vancouver, how that was handled. And, one thing that really stood out to me is the leadership of Backlund.
Yes. Yeah.
Was it not really visible, wasn't it?
Yeah. Very visible, audible, enjoyable. That was one of my biggest takeaways. And also Ryan Huska and what a great communicator he is.
Mm-hmm.
That team likes that coach, and he articulates very well in the dressing room in a way that's believable. I think that's one of the reasons for the success. I think his coaching style is what's made this group as tight as it is.
I'm like, you got to walk a fine line between being too much of a player's coach and too much of a hard ass, and I think Ryan Huska's kind of bridged that gap pretty well. And it seems like a hell of a cohesive group. I know they're not going to show us clips of shit that wouldn't be cohesive. But all in all, I thought episode 4 was much better than episode 2 and 3.
Yep.
I don't know how many episodes are they doing.
Well,
going, or I mean,
well, my impression it's such that it seems like it would keep going, even though I thought it was just like a training camp to start of the season kind of thing. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I am locked in for those 20-25 minutes of each episode.
I know, me too. Like I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
awesome.
Awesome.
I've watched a couple other teams. A lot of teams are doing it. I didn't know it was like such a big thing, but I know Winnipeg's doing it. I watched some of theirs, and that theirs has been really good too. Dallas is doing it.
Yeah.
There's multiple teams that are out there doing it. I believe New Jersey may too. But it is, when it is your team, it is it's kind of awesome because it makes you feel like you're right in there with them, right?
Yeah, exactly. It just adds another layer of fan interaction and engagement that we wouldn't otherwise have. So I'm a big fan of it. One of the tougher parts of watching that was Devin Cooley getting cut. And the funny thing is, as I'm watching that, I see he had a shutout with the Calgary Wranglers, and Walker Dewar had a hat trick of all people. So that was pretty cool too. But I think we're going to see.
Are you ripping on Walker Dewar?
Oh, he's not known as being the leading goal scorer on the Calgary Wranglers, right? Or any team for that matter. I think it's great. And Jacob Peltier has been racking up the points too, so it seems like he might be back on track.
Yeah, and that'll fast forward us. There's been talk this week, and Frank Saravelli pointed out that the Flames may be shopping for a center.
Yeah.
He left the fact out that it would still fit into the age range that works for this rebuild. And I saw on X last night a couple people, it wasn't just one, but a couple people said, well, I think we have a guy in Rory Kearns.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, well, he's put up a bunch of points. He had 5 goals, but seriously, and it's like the Walker Dewar thing, and it's the Peltier thing. It's not that I don't think that they're all good hockey players, but we can't lose track that this is the American Hockey League, and when these guys were up with the big club, they struggled, right? And it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some growth. And if we think that he's going to be able to step into a top 6 center role, goodness gracious, let's.
Well, I mean, we don't necessarily know they're looking for a top 6 center because that's a pretty high acquisition cost.
But I heard mid 6, I heard second, third line center. I don't know. I heard names floated out there of potential guys that they would go after with Zegras, Martin Necas, which we've talked about numerous times.
Yeah.
Barrett Hayton. I hear all these things and I say, yeah, that sounds wonderful, right? Only why would those teams give them up? Well, you think Carolina's giving up Martin Necas right now? I don't think
Trevor Zegras would be a very expensive acquisition, I believe.
Do you think so? Because he'd be of the ones I named, he'd be my least one I would want to acquire, because I don't know why, and maybe this is my own problem. I think we need a big-bodied right-handed center down the middle.
Okay, yeah, but they don't grow on trees, as we know, right? So
I know, and that's probably what we're going to have to draft this year. Right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're flush at every other position as far as I can tell. D prospect is insane. The goaltenders, all of them, like Walter Ignatiev included, is good. To say nothing of Siniev and all the other players in the system. And then the wings are great. So, but back to Rory Kearns for a second. The only thing I can say about him at this point is this guy went from, a strong AHL forward to maybe we should call this guy up at some point. That's as far as we've got with him, I think.
These are good news stories, right? I mean, when I don't know, and maybe it's my attitude and maybe it's my thought process, but I always see when I see these things on X and people say, well, look at this guy, how he's doing in the AHL. I'm always thinking to myself, that's a good thing, right? Shouldn't we be happy that Rory Kearns has 5 goals and that Walker Dewar's exploded last night and had a hat trick? We should be excited about those things, right? We shouldn't be pissed that they're not up with the big club, right?
No, I didn't. I think it's also important, much like the Flames start itself. Like you don't want to overreact to some guys tearing it up in the American League, because it doesn't mean that they're ready. It's, as we've said many, many, many times, as everybody's pointed out, it's a quantum leap, the American League to the NHL. Matt Coronado now looks like an everyday NHLer. Looks like at this point, still limited sample size, so we'll see. The jury's still out on that.
Did you think he struggled last night a bit?
I thought the whole team struggled.
Yeah, good point. Shut me up right away.
Well, some guys said
you're right though. You're totally right.
Dan Vladar was good.
Yep.
We kind of got screwed on that call on Nazem Kadri, I felt, because that wasn't his.
I felt so too, and I felt like it was a key time of the game too.
Well, if they don't have video review on penalties, then okay, fine, it's a mistake. But when you review it and you see what happened, it's like, are you kidding me? And then I tweeted about this, and I at Nirvana's expense, and they call Huberdeau for what was it? Oh, a slash on the gloves, and it was hardly anything. It's like, really, you allowed that goal to stand. Or you allowed rather that penalty to stand, leading to a goal, and then you're going to call that, and that's where I was like, okay, like I'm done with this shit. Like,
but it goes back to this replay. Like I'm all for replay if you get it right because of the replay, but they missed that call, and then the goal one that they gave Calgary a week ago, I still think that should not have counted.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But it's the same thing.
I still think that should have been a goal, and I don't know.
We're talking about the Edmonton game, right?
The Edmonton one, yeah. I mean,
the offside one was clearly offside, but the Corey Perry interference, that was not interference, which is hilarious because Corey Perry's entire career is based on goaltender interference. But I digress.
The one time I don't know. I just like if you're gonna have replay, like get it right.
Yeah. The thing that concerned me, and I'm not the only one who's pointed this out to this point, but in the Seattle game, we're going to lose eventually, something in the world. Anthony Mantha had his worst game as a Flame by far. He was completely invisible. Did nothing offensively. I think he threw a hit that I don't really remember. And that's always been the knock against Mantha. He's up and down. I still think we're going to see a lot of good things from him, but he didn't have a very good night at all. Kadri, I can't fault him for that penalty, but overtime was the winning goal was essentially his fault. Which 3-on-3, that's going to happen. I'm not shitting on Nazem Kadri, but it was just a boring game. I don't know how. It was like 2:00 by the time it was over here. I don't know how the hell I stayed up for that.
I don't think we played well. Like we've had 2 games now since we last talked, which was a really quiet week for the Flames, and I thought we struggled pretty poorly. I mean, I thought we were pretty poor in the Chicago game, and I thought last night was even more of a grind for this team where it was, holy cow, the first 10 minutes last night were the sloppiest hockey I've seen counting the preseason.
It was absolutely brutal. And we've been hearing for a while this is going to happen. The shooting percentages are going to come down. The defensive breakdowns will be a little more common. I thought actually Braden Pahal still had a pretty good game last night.
Braden Pahal might be our best player of the year so far.
All around, probably, yeah.
I mean, I'm purely talking just like not obviously he's not going to be a scorer for us, but like not making mistakes. Yeah. And he's been solid. He's been really, really solid. How about a waiver pickup that is, huh?
Oh, unbelievable. And next to him, and he hasn't played as many games yet, but Dustin Wolf, like he shut down Connor Bedard single-handedly and at least twice in that game against Chicago. Look, he's been phenomenal so far.
Well, our goaltending, it has been phenomenal. Wolf that night was 31 of 32.969 save percentage on the season. He is, let me see here he's at 0.944. Vladar after
the shaky first outing.
Well, the one period against Vancouver. Outside of that, he's been really good. Even with that, he's at 0.89.
Yeah.
He's 2-0-1 and Wolf is 2-0-0. Both goalies, let's just be honest here. Goaltending has not been our problem. And it's funny because Vladar started all the road games and Wolf started all the home games.
Yeah. The funny thing is so far we don't have any problems per se. Now we've seen some problems like in the Seattle game. That stuff's going to happen, but we're going to be a couple more weeks of watching Flames hockey. A regular schedule, not just 2 games in a week. Like by the time I get back from the game against the Canadiens in November, we'll have a much better idea, I think, of what this team's issues are, right?
Yep. No, I agree. What did you make of, and I mentioned it on the last show, because I had some feelings and some doubts on it, but what did you think of Miramonov dropping out of the lineup and it being Uyghur, Barry, Ball, Anderson, Bean, Pahal?
To this point in the season, if I was going to pull any of the regulars out so Tyson Barrett could get a game, it probably would have been Miramonov.
Me too, because I thought Miramonov was not good.
No, he's been average otherwise. I don't think he's been bad, but Uyghur and Anderson are never coming out, quite frankly.
No, and I don't think Pahal is. I don't think Pahal's coming onto the lineup either. And I agree. I like Bean and Pahal together. Yeah. I have not been a fan of Barry, and I have not been a fan of Ball at all. Big body. I love some of the things he brings to the game, but he has some TJ Brody turnovers, and once in a while he looks like he's
7.
I don't know.
I don't know. He's not physical enough for his size, but I like his positioning. I like the way he can box players out down low and in front of the net. But I mean, overall, I think he's been pretty good. But again, if anybody's coming out, and I guess when I said earlier that it was never going to be Anderson or Uyghur, Pahal is a very recent addition to that group. Start of the season, I wouldn't have had him pegged there. I thought he'd be sitting maybe for Joel Hanley, right? But Barry is strictly a power play specialist and a great teammate. He was never going to play all 82 games, but I think Miramonov was due to sit one and just take the game in for the press box.
I'm interested to see what this does for him. I think this could be a huge blessing for us. Like I do. I think it's good once in a while. I never could figure out how he earned a top 4 spot so quickly and so easily since we acquired him. And I'm not saying that he may, as the future progresses, fall into that spot and do very well in it. But I thought it came easy for him. And now I think he's seeing some of the difficulties, and maybe a night up in the press box is a reboot, and we see him come back into the lineup with a couple strong outings and something he can build upon and grow from.
Yeah, I think that's the hope. I mean, it's a bit of an enigma too. Like he did the Dustin Bufflin, right? Went from forward to defense at the behest of Igor Larionov. Very late and very, very late in his career, in fact. So he's a bit of a project, and I think he was acquired in that trade with the understanding he's a bit of a project. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But
I had to laugh. I'm going to cut you off here quick. I had to laugh last night because I was going to text you, but Michael Stone's going to get a run for his money here with Braden Pahal with me. I'm starting the fan club, man. I'm starting the fan club.
Yeah, we're going to try and get him on. Yeah,
I've been super impressed with him. I really have. I've been super impressed with him.
Yeah, and nobody's really spoken to him that I've seen at length to say like, hey, you were a waiver pickup. You were thought of as a 6-7D, obviously, and were deemed expendable by your former club. Like, did that just set your ass on fire going into the summer to say, I'm going to be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL? Or what was your mindset? Did you change your training? Did you skate more this summer? Like, what the hell did you do? Because he is not somebody I thought we'd be talking this much about.
You didn't see. I saw it coming on last year. Like I thought he was fine last year, but I thought he just kept building on it. I thought, man, if he keeps working it, if he keeps moving in this direction, he's going to be, he's going to be one of our 6, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Absolutely. He's been great. He's probably the most pleasant surprise out of several, right?
Let's stay on the topic of defensemen. And last night we didn't get to see any goals, right?
No.
Which was frustrating.
Very.
That brings us to our X Factor, and I'll let you.
Can I read this one?
Yes, you're taking it.
I sent you a few, but this one was by far the best. So this is from Tony Allen at Tony Rouge. I'm really just here for the Razz death stare. So Tony, thanks for that. I thought that was brilliant, and I mean, I think a lot of us are here just for that, right?
I agree. I mean, I think it's been a funny topic and a fun topic to talk about with the success we've had to start this season. And it made me laugh. And then I saw later last night that Zane Parekh did it when he scored a goal the other night too. And I thought,
did he?
Oh yeah. So I'm like, oh my, this is going to really take off here now. And who else is going to do this too? But you know what? Leave it to Rasmus Anderson to come up with that one.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. I was at the Wildcats game on Friday night. I was tweeting about this. So Etienne Morin finished the game with 4 assists. So he's like well over a point per game with Moncton so far this year. But I want to maybe he'll end up doing the death stare as the season goes on.
Rooney's about ready to come back from injury. So where do you see that going? He's been out 4 games now, and is set to slot back in at 4th line center. Where do we go with Kirkland? Is he going to be the odd man out? Or I mean, I'm trying to remember. Can we send? He can go back on waivers without clearing waivers, right?
Yes,
so I don't have to worry about that right now. So
I think
10 games, 10 games, 30 days.
I could see them playing both and pulling Klapka out while Hansik's hurt potentially.
You think so?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, they really like Rooney, and I don't, and
I do.
I don't.
We go back and forth on that one. I think he fits that 4th line center role perfectly.
Well, apparently, so does Justin Kirkland. So,
you know what? And I was super impressed with Justin Kirkland. I thought he was down last night, but like we said that for about everybody last night. Yeah. But I thought he had a little bit of an off night, which is going to happen from time to time. And you know, look at the positives. We've talked negative about the Seattle game a lot on this show so far, but hey, we got a point out of that. We got a point.
Yeah, and I mean, if your first loss is, you know, you're still undefeated in regulation, you know, like that's at 5 games in. I mean, that's not an incredible feat, but it's a damn good sign of, you know, this team being way more competitive than everybody thought they'd be. So, we'll see what the next 2 weeks bring. I mean, one of those things that should be happening relatively soon should be the return of Yegor Sharangovich.
I would think that I haven't heard any updates lately, but that should be coming sooner than later. And Hansa currently is week to week, which has caused some line shuffles and moved Coronado up to that first line, flip-flop wing sides with Kuzmenko, and then that got Klapka in. How did you feel about Coronado moving up to that line and his play on that first line?
Well, his game against Chicago gave him that opportunity, and rightfully so. I thought he was good. I think that the line had a little bit of, you know, figuring out to do, so to speak, but I was happy to see him get a scoring opportunity like on a line like that, and hopefully it continues for the next couple of games. I think this guy's making a real strong case to stick with the team, but the team as a whole looked fairly shaky last night.
Yeah.
So I don't want to come down too much on Coronado. I thought he was fine. He was fantastic against Chicago, albeit on a different line. So, you know, jury's out, but we'll see what happens.
So the Hanzik injury, the whole seemed like the last 10 minutes of the Chicago game. It was like, oh boy, is this guy injured? Coleman had a block shot. I believe Uyghur had one in the hand. We had Kirkland blocked too late. Big blocks too, by the way. Yep. But it seemed, and you know, it just seemed like everybody was talking about injuries, but Hanzik goes to drill Murphy, and Murphy absolutely laid him out. And it might have been the hardest hit I've seen in 2 years. Hanzik bounced off of him like he hit
like Denny Hamel on Dion Phaneuf.
It was unreal.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I felt bad for him. It was a lesson learned. He went back to the bench, was banging his stick, and I think his bell was wrong, and thus the week-to-week injured reserve that he is on currently. So do we get a call-up now with him going to the injured reserve spot?
I guess it depends on how close Sharangovich is. And because they haven't called anybody up yet, that makes me think that they believe he's close.
Yeah.
Which he should be based on the timeline we were originally given. However, let me ask you, if Sharangovich is going to be out a little bit longer, if you're calling somebody up, who is it?
I don't really know, because quite honestly, whoever you call up, I don't know that he slots into a roster spot, right?
Yeah, maybe I guess it depends, right?
So with the Wranglers right in town, do we have to call somebody up?
Oh, you might want them on the road with you as an extra body for practice, and to maybe if you're playing it back.
We don't go on the road, do we? Here,
well, not for a little bit. I don't think.
I know look at our schedule here. We're home all week. We got Pittsburgh Tuesday, Carolina Thursday, Winnipeg Saturday. Like,
yeah,
Sharangovich should be back by then.
Well, you would think, but we shall see.
I don't know. I think personally, I'd probably just leave the guys in the AHL and let them play. I mean, if they were going to be able to step into a roster spot, then, you know, I don't know. Do you make a case and want to see Jacob Peltier come up because we could get him back waiver free within the time. I believe it's 10. How does that work? No, would he would not be waiver exempt going back?
No, he wouldn't.
So no, I don't bring him up now because when we bring him up, he needs to come up when there's an injury that he needs to actually play for a while, right?
Well, and I think like it's tempting because he is playing. He looks like his old self right now with the Wranglers. It's tempting to call him up, but there's no need
dangerous, right?
Yeah, and one of the guys like Dewar, like Dewar was a regular on this team at one point, and a lot of us forget that. Be nice to see him get a chance again. Or again, I love guys playing their first 3 initial games. I think Roy Curran's made a really strong case for a recall, so maybe we see that at some point.
And that could be. 4 in a row. Did you think that was going to happen?
What, the team?
No, that we were going to win 4 games in a row to start out of this.
Fuck no.
So I started laughing.
Pardon my language, but fuck no.
I got a buddy that's a Minnesota Vikings fan, right?
Yeah.
And him and I were talking about this, and we were talking about the correlations between the Vikings start to the Flames start.
Well, you mentioned this on our last show,
and it's ridiculous too because the Vikings in Game 2 beat like a cup content, or they beat the Vikings in Game 2, beat the 49ers who were in the Super Bowl last year, and then they beat the rival Green Bay Packers. It's like all these correlations are like they're like the same. The way the Flames season started, the Vikings lost today, and on a last second play, like basically almost an overtime, but on a last second field goal, and the Flames lose last night. But no, I don't think any of us saw this coming. And I know you're a stats guy, and I'm a stats guy, and I look at this and I see numbers such as, when a team starts 4-0, it's an 80.4% chance of making the playoffs. That's based on all the way back in the time history of hockey. When they win 4 in a row since the lockout, they're 52.8% chance of making the playoffs. And I think we're probably a little premature to be talking about playoffs. And I know there was a hell of an uproar on X this week with fans, stay the course on your plan. I don't think anybody said if we keep winning that we're going to like alter the course of the team here and sign a Patrick Maroon or something. I mean, give me a break, guys.
That was never a concern.
Slow down.
All we're doing now is looking at, we're, apparently Mr. Ravelli said the team is looking at acquiring a center, which they were probably going to do anyway, but it's like, we do have a ton of prospects and picks. It's like, if you can acquire a good young center, you should probably do it because it's going to help with what you're trying to do anyway. Because again, we've identified that as position in the organization that's probably the weakest.
Yeah.
Our 2 best centers are getting long in the tooth. So, speaking of that, speaking of those centers, I did start reading Mazen Kadri's book.
And?
Well, my boss at work felt it was kind of premature for him to release a book in the middle of his
I think so. Crazy.
Yeah.
But remember Theo Fleury's first one, Playing with Fire, was just it left out 90% of the story, right?
Well, Playing with Fire was, remember Fury?
Excuse me, Fury. It wasn't Playing with Fire, it was Fury.
Gosh, Fury, like in 97 or whatever it was.
I have that book sitting here on my.
That's probably worth a lot of money because it's hard
probably a hard book to find.
It's pretty. Anyway, the Kadri book is pretty good. I mean, there's some context to stories you might remember about him where he tells like why he behaved a certain way, and a lot of it's rooted in the racist experiences he had and that kind of bullshit. But it's interesting. I'm just to the point now where he played his first innings again with the Leafs, and like it's not a big book. He wrote it with Dan Robson, who also did Clinton Larchuk's book and Doug Gilmore's book. So he's got the right partner, and it's good. I've enjoyed it so far, and I'll read a little bit more of it tonight. But I mean, I think Kadri, to talk about him for a second, he's been exactly as advertised since he came to the Flames. He had a great year last year, but there's him and there's Backlund, and then the depth chart at center just falls off a cliff, right? So,
well, we'll see. I've been fairly impressed with Pospisil so far. I have.
It's just too early for me to really say that he actually in his game last night I thought was really weak. Probably the worst one I've seen him play as a Flame, which is not even that scathing of an indictment because he has been so good. But I think you're going to see that team, and maybe it was, like bouncing down to Seattle, kind of a sleepy in between home games type game. Like, I don't know.
Connor Zary was invisible last night too,
And I wore the Connor Zary t-shirt, and he was still friggin' invisible.
Yeah, I know. I saw you had that on.
Frustrated. Anyway,
you know what's funny? You know what's funny though? It's like I was like not really pro Pospisil at center, and I wasn't Sharon Govich at center. I was more Connor Zary at center. And Pospisil's proven me. I can't say he's proven me wrong so far, but I think he's been pretty darn effective in that slot. I
don't like guys moving. Yeah, no, he's been good for the most part, but I never liked guys moving to center. It just always bothered me for some reason, because I just feel like in my head they're too inexperienced. Oh, they're going to suck on face-offs. They're not going to be strong on the puck. And if you played, I mean, it's a much more difficult position than wing. It's much more difficult.
Did you hear them talking about face-offs last night on the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast? And how they said that so many players come into the league and their first 2 years at center, they struggle miserably on face-offs, and then it grows in time. They said they even referenced Sidney Crosby. They said, even the guys like him struggled initially out of the gates winning face-off. So we can't come and sit and say, Martin Pospisil, you're at 51% face-off. We need to. That just doesn't happen overnight, right?
No, God, no, not at all. And that's one of the bigger face-offs are still. I mean, as much as we talk about them, it's still a very underrated part of hockey, because
underrated.
It predicates possession. I mean, and with 3-on-3 overtime, it's the most important part. If you can win a face-off clean 3-on-3, you're probably going to win the hockey game.
Yep.
But yeah, that'll continue to get better. But you're absolutely right. I mean. And Kadri talks about that in his book, and I don't want to spoil it too much for those who want to read it, but like he talks about his first NHL face-off against Joe Thornton, and Thornton's like, congratulations and welcome to the bigs, whatever it was he said, and he basically like snaps Kadri's stick on the opening face-off of the game. Because those veteran players, that's just like that's the one thing of all you can be like you can come into the league like Enrico Fatter or Matthew Lombardi, be the fastest skater out there right off the hop, But face-offs against grown men with thick forearms who do it every day. You're going to get your head caved in for the first couple of seasons. No question.
It's a trick, man. And there's a lot of tricks to it, right?
And I'm curious, noted face-off kings like Yannick Perreault, did he come into the league and was just good at face-offs? I don't think so.
No, like they were saying Crosby struggled miserably with it in his first 2 years. And
yeah,
I don't know. I want to actually, when you think of face-off guys too, and I know he's probably not, he shouldn't probably be in my top thought process for top face-off guys, but Jonathan Toews always comes to mind. And
I miss him. I
want to do a little research. I might do that tonight when I'm sitting around. I might do a little reference back and see what his face-off percentage was like in year 1, 2 versus what it was, 6, 7, 8 years in. I can't help but believe there isn't a progression. I can't help but believe there isn't a progression.
I got to talk about that for a second, because the light bulb went off when you mentioned his name. If I'm to put aside all the Flames-related success stories that I want to see this year, the number one hockey thing I would love to see, and I don't even know if it's possible, would be to see Jonathan Toews sign a contract with Winnipeg Jets. To go home to Winnipeg.
Did he not just announce his retirement, though?
Did he?
I thought he did.
I thought he was still... he's probably still getting paid insurance. He might have said something like he's not going to play again. If he did, I didn't see it, but...
I thought he did. Gosh,
I don't even know. Has there been any news on him? Practically looks retired.
I don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to look up that too. You got me thinking. I sure miss that guy. He was a stud here in North Dakota, and man, just such a good guy.
Yeah, 2023. He said he was taking time away from hockey. That's over a year ago. It was August of 23.
I thought I just saw a blurb on Sportsnet like a week ago about it.
I don't know. I'm looking at the news here now, and there's just nothing. It's just nothing. Anyway, I don't know.
So we don't get the 5-0. But when you look at this week, we had a really light week with just 2 games, the Chicago game and the Seattle game. Now this week, things change a little bit, right? As we get right after it, it's going to get busy. And there are a lot of home games here. On Tuesday night, Pittsburgh comes to town. Thursday night, Carolina comes to town. Saturday, a red-hot Winnipeg Jets comes to town. Mm-hmm. And then on Monday, the team heads off on a 2-game road trip head to Vegas on Monday night, and then we'll be back on the air on Tuesday. So there's 4 games before we talk again, Kyle.
Yeah,
3 of which are at home. The schedule gets busier now, and then I started to think, what am I going to consider a success here? And the number 6-2. If we're 6-2 in the first 8 games, there's our success.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now it's going to be 6-1-1, maybe.
Yeah.
This is where it starts to get a little bit more real to me. Speaking of the Jets, they beat the Penguins today 6-3, so that's another big win for them. I'm of a similar mind, especially where the last week was so light, and then they had that bit of a letdown game in Seattle. So Tuesday is going to be very, very interesting, I think. Now, concerning the Carolina game, is Brent Burns okay? Did you see what happened to him last night?
I don't know. I have not heard. I saw a video of him blocking a snapshot in the neck. He turned his head and he caught him. Looked like it caught him in the back side of the neck. I did not hear an injury report today though.
I don't know. Avoid severe injury. He might be fine. Anyway,
have you ever met Brent Burns?
Actually, yes, in 2009 when he was with the Wild in Calgary.
He is a total character. You remember when the NHL did all that footage on the gentleman from Saskatoon that was blind, his son would take him to the Saskatoon Blades games and do the commentating for the dad at the games, and they got to meet the couple. That was at the NHL Awards show in Vegas, and I was there, and I happened to be right next to Brent Burns when he got to meet them. And it was just interesting to see the interaction and what a good guy Brent Burns was. He was dressed in like khaki, like camouflage, like deck shorts, sandals, and a tank top with a bandana, and everybody else had suits on. And I was just kind of like, okay,
yeah, that's Brent Burns for sure.
A different dude, but also it seemed like a very personable, nice guy.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And actually, it's interesting you brought up the NHL awards because that's the other thing Elliot Friedman talked about last night is that the awards are undergoing some kind of an overhaul. So stay tuned for that. Yeah,
that'll be interesting. Lots of changes. The draft one upsets me the most. The awards one I can kind of understand maybe a little bit, but gosh dang, the draft one just that one gets.
I wish
I don't understand why you can't have the award show at the same place as the draft and have the award show the night before or 2 nights before and make it like a celebration of the season, and the new season starts tomorrow with the draft. I don't know, but I think,
well, it's a funny analogy maybe, but like the way WWE does it where they do their Hall of Fame induction the night before WrestleMania, it's always been it makes it part of the big weekend.
Yeah,
and there's something like that the NHL could do to make it, because I like the NHL awards at this point has become so watered down and so campy as it tries to be pop culture-y that I have a hard time watching it.
Oh, it was so bad last year. I couldn't do it. It was last year was
that the Kucherov interview, man. Oh, that was cringeworthy.
You know, I guess as you just said that, an idea came to mind, and we'll let the listeners go about their day. But so why not? See, I always say Hall of Fame weekend is such a forgotten weekend. Mm-hmm. It's in a horrible time. It's in like the first weekend in November. Why don't we have a giant party at the end of the Stanley Cup, and you have the Hall of Fame inductions one night. The next night you have the award show or vice versa, whatever. And then you have a night off and there's an NHL social gathering party. And then the draft is the next Friday and Saturday. Would that not be a way to celebrate?
It might be a good way to give people more time off by condensing it.
Right. I mean, everybody's there, and make it a fan event. Have that day in between be a fan fest. Yeah. And I don't know. I just feel like there's something you can do that would make fans happy and make it good for teams and easier for teams.
Oh, no question. Right. It just seems like it's been coming to a point for a while now where some kind of change is needed. The league is a lot bigger than it used to be. The popular markets have engaged the sport more now. Of course, you have Vegas. Anyway, the changes are coming. I'm curious to see how they're rolled out and what that looks like. But I'd like to see everything, as you're saying, put a little bit more together, because I think it's a little unreasonable now that these guys are, basically training or playing from the summer, but September when it really rolls a training camp right up through possibly May or June, depending on how far they go. And then we have preseason, everybody gets all banged up. It's like, well, yeah, probably their bodies are on all the time, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, lots of things that could happen, and it'll be interesting. But a busy week for the Flames. Pittsburgh comes to town. Carolina comes to town. Winnipeg comes to town. Boy, that Winnipeg game, that's going to be something else. That'll definitely be a test, but surely can't overlook the Pittsburgh Penguins or the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah. I hope the Penguins play the same way they did against Calgary when I was there when Kaprizov's jersey's retirement. Chris Letang was a turnover machine, so fingers crossed.
Sharon Govich had a really nice goal, and that was
Audrey had the goal of the year that game.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a fun night. That was a real fun night last year.
Yeah.
A year where we didn't have a lot of fun nights. That was definitely a fun night.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
I will say this before we leave. Next week when we sit down and we do this, we are going to know a whole lot more about this team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm kind of excited because, like, at home you have like all the distractions around you and like different things going on. Well, I'm traveling for work a little bit this week, so Tuesday night when they play the Penguins, I'll be at a hotel in Halifax, and it'll just be like me in the game, right?
Perfect.
Yeah, and then Thursday I'll be playing that night, which means I'll probably just catch a second and third. But anyway, it's gonna be a really telling week. I'm looking forward to taking in as much of it as possible. And also seeing what happens with Kevin Rooney, with Miromanov maybe getting back in, the Wolf Vladar tandem, Sharon Govich returning. There's a lot of storylines in and around how this team's going to perform, so stay tuned. It's going to be fun.
All right, Flames fans, have a great week, and we will talk next week.
Thanks for listening to Flames Unfiltered with Brad Burud and Kyle Lewis, your source for unfiltered Calgary Flames hockey talk. Keep it locked on flamesunfiltered.ca. Subscribe where you get all your podcasts to never miss an episode. Flames hockey talk every week, presented by Inside Edge Hockey Media Group.